Okay, good afternoon. My name is Dan Sjöblom. I am the chair of BEREC this year, 2020. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all to this webinar on the fourth and final BEREC Public debrief for this year. As you know, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the debriefings are held virtually. I think it will work well. It has been, for all of us, a very exceptional year, but I'm very personally proud that we have managed to fulfill what we set out to do. We have managed to keep up our work plan and deliver according to all the deadlines set out in the code for BEREC to do many, many things. And we have, during the year, delivered all of the 11 guidelines, 8 of them this year, 3 of them the year before, to promote the consistent application of the electronic communication code amongst us NRAs and across Europe. And of course, what we want to do is reduce to as much as we can regulatory uncertainty for you in the industry. We have also engaged quite extensively with our international partners in 2020. We have learned many digital skills. I have had the pleasure to share the ITU ESR this year, and recently we have reconfirmed our commitment with TRAI from India, where we have extended the MOU we had since earlier with this organization. We are about to do the same with our friends from other jurisdictions, the EMERG group from the Eastern Mediterranean countries, and also with Canada, the CRTC is the organization there. We also have an MOU with the Eastern Partnership countries, the BEREC, and there I will next year serve as vice chair in that organization, which usually has one member from the EU and one member from those countries chairing and vice chairing. And I think that would be a good occasion to continue the interaction between the Eastern Partnership countries and BEREC. So cooperation and coordination on ICT regulation is more important than ever, given the importance of access for everything in our lives, and especially during the pandemic. There's a huge difference for those with good access and those without. Of course, we all know that. We have been working hard this year on a project that we didn't know when the year started. We have been monitoring the functioning of the internet across the EU. It started with a twice weekly reporting exercise, went over to weekly exercises, and then now we're reporting monthly, and we may think about doing it even less frequent, because we have seen essentially that the internet has worked really well and responded really well to the COVID-19 crisis. So again, said it many times, thanks very much for everyone in the industry for delivering functioning internet access throughout the pandemic. That is really very, very important. For the agenda today, I will first give some information about the election of the BEREC co-chairs for 2021. I will inform you about the only new public consultation we decided on the plenary meeting, and then Michel from Bellinghen, who is our chair for 2021, will talk about the work program for that year, which has been adopted at the plenary. And then you will have a first look at the work program for 2022 from the incoming chair for that year, Annemarie Sipkes from the Dutch NRA. Then we'll go over to various working groups who will present ongoing or decided work, first out would be Fixed Network Evolution co-chairs who will present the guidelines on the application of Article 61. That will be followed by the Statistics and Indicators Working Group, who will present guidelines on geographic service or network deployments. And then you will hear from NEA, who will talk about their work on co-investment in very high-capacity network elements. After those presentations, we will have a first 15-minute Q&A where you can put your questions or indicate your name and organization in the chat, and I will pass the word around to those seeking to get more information on any particular point. And after that first Q&A, we will move over to planning and future trends, giving us a presentation of the 5G radar report. And then we go to fixed network evolution, talking about the evolution of state aid rules, where BEREC has provided a response to the Commission. And then the presentation ends with an update from our ad hoc cybersecurity co-chairs about the EU 5G cybersecurity toolbox, strategic measures 5 and 6, which is diversification of suppliers and strengthening of national resilience. We'll have another Q&A session, same as the first one. Indicate your names in the chat, and we'll take it as we go along. So with that, that's the program. I'll start with the elected members in BEREC. I will not go through all the names here, but there are a number of new co-chairs. Very much welcome to all new co-chairs. Of course, welcome again to remaining co-chairs. I am very happy to say that this year's list is a very diverse and well-representing BEREC membership. We have representation from no less than 18 NRAs in the list. I'm not sure if that's a record or not, but I think it's certainly useful for us to have that wide group of excellent co-chairs representing us in the tasks ahead. Now, on public consultation, there is just one item, as I told you. It's the Statistics and Indicators Group. They're opening up the public consultation on the draft guidelines for the consistent application of geographical service of network deployments. And the date to submit comments there is the 27th of January 2021. Of course, welcome to any input to that public consultation. So with those introductory words, I will now pass the floor on. And first out is our incoming chair, Michel. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dan. I hope you can hear me well. And hello, everybody. It is my privilege and an honor for me as incoming chair for next year to guide you this work program. Next slide, please. So it's not the first time we engage with stakeholders regarding this work program. Earlier this year, as part of the strategy, we have also launched an early call for input, and of course the public consultation we closed on the 5th of November. For that, as you can see on the screen, we received 14 non-confidential contributions. Many thanks for that. Many thanks for your broad support. Those contributions will be published on the BEREC website with a summary, but also, and it is important to highlight, our response to these contributions. Next slide, please. So this is the general overview of the objectives and priorities of our work program for next year. we will, of course, focus on three high-level priorities. This work program follows the structure of all these priorities and objectives, and is also aligned with the new strategy 2021-2025. So to start with, the first one on promoting full connectivity. Of course, 5G is at the forefront of agenda, given its strategic importance. Reason why we will organize a workshop with NRAs and competent authorities to share our experience on the 5G rollouts and information to end users on the availability of 5G services and networks. As second element on this priority, we know that the 5G rollouts and fiber rollouts strongly depends on the subsurface, but also on different elements such as backhaul and migration from copper to fiber. And for that, we will, if we want to really foster the advent of 5G and fiber, we will gather in a workshop the main stakeholders association to exchange views, and based on this exchange, we will issue a draft report on Q3. Another element is of course a report we will issue aiming to develop a consistent approach on migration and copper switch off, and this based on detailed data collection. And last element on this first priority is related to a report we will deliver, issuing recommendation to enable comparable national broadband coverage indicators across Europe. Second priority related to sustainable and open digital markets. It is important for BEREC to keep tracking the development in these electronic communication sectors, but also in related sectors. So we need to continue to develop our expertise to do that on platform and digital platform regulations. And so we need to have a good understanding of the impact of these new technologies on business models and market dynamics, so that we are able to coordinate the implementation of appropriate regulatory measures. Second element on this priority, we will of course continue our monitoring on the implementation of open network provisions, and of course we will together with the other NRAs keep this forum to exchange on the different national cases related to the correct implementation of the regulation. Third priority regarding empowering end users. There also we envisage to publish a study in order to provide BEREC and the NRAs with an evidence-based understanding of the interaction between the consumers and digital platform. Another element is, of course, that for the first time we will perform a monitoring exercise of technological and market development in the use of the different types of electronic communications service. We will also analyze their impact on the application of end users' rights. This is as final objective to issue an opinion by the end on next year on end users' rights. But of course, regarding the as regards the other elements you see on the screen, we have in BEREC an overarching objective to strive toward engaging cooperatively and effectively with stakeholders, and with stakeholders like the other EU institution, especially when it comes to tackle future challenges together. You also know that the 2021 will be a heavy year for EU institutions with a lot of legislative work, a lot of existing instruments which have to be revised, such as the roaming regulation, broadband cost reduction directive, also NRAs directive, but access recommendation, 5G recommendation, and so on. So BEREC stands ready to provide its independent advice to the EU institutions and the Commission, and this based on our long-standing experience in the field of electronic communications sector. But of course, we have also horizontal priorities, such as the implementation of the codes, the sustainability, and stakeholders engagement. And I come to it later on with the next slide, please. So, on the next slide, I would start to thank you very much for your very useful and constructive contribution, for the support you brought it on the content of our work program for next year. I can assure you that next year the successful implementation of the call will remain a big part of a substantial part of our work when promoting the EU single market, and also creating the conditions for competition and investment, ensuring connectivity, while also protecting end users' rights. We have also received support not only for the more traditional items on the agenda, but also for the new challenges, as you can see, related to digitalization and sustainability, but also with the COVID situations and the first lessons learned regarding the resilience of electronic communications, and also the need to bridge the digital divide. Of course, we also very much appreciated your willingness as stakeholders to engage more, to have more interaction, more public consultation, and this is something we will do through a different instrument. And to give you more details on that, I will just give you 3 concrete examples. The first one on the workshop, we will have a second workshop with a stakeholder before issuing our report on comparable national broadband coverage indicator. We will envisage a dedicated workshop on open internet provisions in case there is a significant development, such as judgment of the Court of Justice. And about this very important opinion on end users' right, we will also organize different workshops, webinars, and launch questionnaires and surveys. But in addition to that, I have to add that we'll have those public debriefing like today, and moreover 2 other occasions to engage with stakeholders. But I will let my estimated colleague Annemarie tell you more about it, because she will be organizing this next year. And with that, I thank you very much for your attention, and I hand over to Annemarie. Annemarie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Michel. And good afternoon to you all. This is, I think, my first formal performance as incoming chair BEREC 22. And as Michel already presented, I think we have a very ambitious work program for 21 already ahead. And at the same time, we also, of course, already start thinking about our program in 2022. As you know, and in a traditional sense, at the end of January, we will submit our outline of the work program to the European Parliament, to the European Council and the Commission. And that will include projects that stem from the new code, that stem from the roaming and net neutrality regulation, plus the work that will carry over from 21. But we will also, of course, make room to undertake projects that stem from our own ambition, that are clear from our strategy that has just been presented, as well as take on priorities on board that you as our stakeholders think should warrant more attention from the European regulators. So to do that, we will launch a call for input at the first quarter of next year. And on the next slide, there are two formal moments, apart from the fact that we will, of course, via our website, invite your comments. We will hold next year, we plan to hold two stakeholder forums. For some time, BEREC has been practicing with the question whether we should hold a stake forum either in spring or in the autumn. And given the fact that the lockdown might take a bit longer than we would have hoped for in the course of this year, we will hold a virtual stakeholder forum on the 1st of April. And the key element in this stakeholder forum will be the first call for input in our work program. So that will be the central theme there. And just to make sure that we can invite everybody and everybody can participate freely, this will be a virtual stakeholder forum. On the other hand, we are a very ambitious crowd, so we do hope that in the second half of the year we are allowed to travel again. So we are looking forward and planning to organize a second stakeholder forum, which will hopefully be a live event in Brussels end of October. And this will allow us not just to launch the public consultation of the work program that we will have prepared by then, but it will also give us ample room to make sure that we have the proper and that we get to meet again and that the co-chairs and all the BEREC NRA representatives can have a bit more intense and more hopefully more fruitful and innovative way of interacting with one another in light of the work that is ahead of us then for 2022. So those are the plans that we have for the work program on 22, and I hope that we can count on as much enthusiastic responses as we have received from you on the work program of 21. And I think with that, then we have concluded the two work programs that as BEREC we envisage. Maybe this is time to go to the first co-chair, and I think Björn will take us from here.
Thank you very much, Annemarie. I'm going to inform on the work on the BEREC guidelines on the criteria for consistent application of Article 61.3 EECC, which was carried out in the Fixed Network Evolution Working Group. Next slide, please. So today, the final guidelines on Article 61.3 are going to be published. The guidelines provide clarifications on important key aspects to determine criteria for the application of the new symmetric framework that is provided for in the EECC. And also today is going to be published the accompanying report on the outcome of the public consultation. In this presentation, I will briefly go into the input we received from the public consultation and also discuss the changes made to the guidelines after the public consultation. Next slide, please. So in total, during the public consultation, we received 19 submissions by stakeholders, 2 of them which are confidential. The other ones will be publicized. And overall, we can say that the submissions that we received are very diverse and often express differing views between the stakeholders depending on which stakeholder is responding. So we've got a diversity of different stakeholders, smaller fiber rollout companies, incumbent size operators, and also different associations on a European level of network operators, and also some for associations on national levels. Some topics which received a high attention include the criterion on accessibility when determining the first concentration or distribution point. Another topic was the definition of the efficient access seeker, which received quite a large attention, and also the relation of the new provision to the SMP framework. And then, of course, we also have exemption to the regulations which are attached to the notions of new and, in particular, small network deployments, and these aspects also received a high attention by the stakeholders. Some topics to which we received quite a numerous amount of feedback are technically speaking not within the scope of the guidelines, and we will clarify in the accompanying report on the scope and give indications where it is possible to point at regulations in the EECC. Next slide, please. So some changes made to the guidelines regard the notion on the or the assumptions on the notion of the hypothetical efficient access seeker. This is clarified in what is now Guideline 4074. So the hypothetical efficient access seeker is, in our view, the starting point, and we also clarified regarding the data submitted by individual operators that this can be considered, but then, of course, is subject to the NRAs assessment because the measure is the efficient access seeker. We added one new paragraph that clarifies that also actual evidence from areas where network replication already took place can inform the NRAs assessment. So we open up a little bit more on the actual evidence observable in the market. All in all, to the criterions linked with the notions of or definitions of new and small networks, no changes in substance were necessary. And otherwise, some further minor clarifications and amendments, in particular, for instance, regarding the relation to the SMP framework, have been made in the guidelines. And this would be the first overview on the guidelines. And now I pass the floor to Begonia from the Statistics and Indicators Group. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bjorn, and good afternoon. I am now going to present the draft BEREC guidelines on the geographical service of network deployments. This is phase 2 guidelines dealing with the verification of data in the broadband mapping databases. Next slide, please. As you know, BEREC delivered the main guidelines in March this year, and those informed on the key indicators and granularity of data that should be included in an Article 22 broadband survey. Now, these complementary guidelines deal with the verification of the data provided by operators and that nurtures the broadband maps. BEREC considers that ensuring the quality of data is key to the delivery of accurate and reliable broadband maps that can be used in the different way the code provides for. So next slide, please. So the guidelines describe the 4 phases of the data quality assurance process. First, the routine internal consistency checks of the database, which should be done before any data is published. Then, once some data or a broadband map is published, the use of the reporting of inaccuracies by external agents, for example, end users, which may be indicative of problems in the main broadband database. Third, the verification phase. This is the cross-checking of the broadband map data against other sources of information. And finally, the decision-making about certain data being valid or invalid. The guidelines deal on those 4 phases and describe the different verification methodologies. For example, the cross-checking of the broadband mapping database with the data on the characteristics and positions of infrastructure, the operator's declaration of services being available on the terrain, different measurements of the quality of networks, in particular, measurement tests or probes carried out by the authority or under the authority's supervision, BEREC considers that this information is helpful to check on the theoretical estimates required in the core guidelines, insofar estimates and measurements are within a reasonable margin. The guidelines strongly recommend that the different databases are organized as different layers in the same geographical information system so that verification is efficient. Knowing the differences in national characteristics, data availability at the authority level, and the development of national broadband maps, the guidelines state that the authorities may choose among different verification methods, picking those that are better to suit their own needs. Finally, the guidelines emphasize that the verification process should be objective, transparent, and non-discriminatory. In BEREC's view, the best way to achieve this is by asking authorities to publish the verification methodologies before they carry out the verification exercise, to discuss certain aspects of those methodologies with the operators, and to regularly publish a broad outline of the verification results. Next slide. So the guidelines will be on public consultation from today until the 27th of January, and we are hoping for your feedback on those, and are foreseen for approval in June 2021. So thank you for listening, and now I should hand over to Jorge from the MEA working group.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. So now what we are to focus on is in the guidelines to foster the application on the conditions and criteria for assessing co-investments in new very high capacity networks. Article 76 in the code. So if we move to the next slide, as you can see here, the public consultation was open at mid-June, along all summer. They finished at the 4th of September. And we have a rich variety of responses here. We had 15 respondents. In general, as expected, the smaller actors that are using more wholesale inputs or that have lower capacity to enter in large and very relevant co-investment agreements are concerned on the implications on lifting the regulation, what they will have access to, and on the application of the criteria for qualifying. In general, they were asking us to be more specific, more prescriptive on certain issues. And large players, on the contrary, in general, were asking for more flexibility and more openness to different ways to articulate the co-investment agreements. So in general, what we have done is we have maintained a balance between being specific and really many of the issues raised. We have gone through clarifications because there were things that to avoid ambiguity, etc., needed clarification, but being sure that we were always maintaining flexibility, because the article in the code that does not preclude exactly which the models are, etc. So there was a risk to be over prescriptive and going further than the code, what the code was asking us. In any case, in the next year, we think that the application of this article will give us very relevant experience, and probably we can enter on some of the issues and some of the proposals. But as told us now, we have refrained to be very, very specific. So if we go to the next slide, in this slide and the next one, you have the main issue raised, etc. We will not go in detail on any of them because we have few time, but this is more or less a summary. In the summary, you can see exactly the rationales for each issue, because there are many small different issues. So as you can see here, for example, we have refrained on going further, specifying on structural and governance issues, because we consider that it could be over-restricted in the future. We may consider, but now we didn't want to enter too much onto that. And for example, there were issues also on the risk assessment in relation with price, that there were interesting proposals that we may consider in the future. But as now, what we want is to gain experience and not to be too prescriptive on the models, because Stoll in the article, there is not a specific and clear list of the model, but on the conditions to be fulfilled. So if we go to the next slide, Stoll, there are some clarifications, for example, on the lifetime of the network that raise some issues, etc. And perhaps to remark that there were two guidelines that were deleted. There are 57 and 58, because we were waiting for the input from stakeholders, and in general, the input was not supportive. There were different legitimate interpretations, so we decided not to go as far on specifying that there were a possibility to add more conditions to the list in paragraph 1b. Okay. And I think that's all, because if we enter into all the details, as told, you have an explanation for it of the issue taken on board or not taken on board in the summary. And that's all, and I think that I hand over to Dan for the Q&A part.
Thank you very much, Jorge, and to the other presenters for that first set of presentations. So stakeholders, this is your moment to indicate in the chat that you would like to take the floor. We have a couple of questions that have been sent to us prior to the meeting. I will take those first, and the first one is actually for you, Jorge. So MEA prepared the BEREC opinion on the Commission's recommendation on relevant product and service markets earlier this year, and now the Commission is about to adopt it. So the question is there any ongoing and further consultation between BEREC and the Commission in this context?
Okay, so thank you for the question. There was some interaction, but essentially to tell us that the Commission were studying and taking into account all the issues raised by BEREC, that according to them it was clear what we were asking for. And we expect, same as stakeholders, we are waiting for the final recommendation to be published one of these days. And in January, we will meet with the Commission to discuss on the interpretation of how issues were taken, etc.
Okay.
But we are waiting.
Thank you. I think we're all interested in waiting in that. So the second question we had was on the transposition of the code into national legislation. It seems that not everyone will meet the deadline of 21st December, which is next week. And the person wants to know what impact this will have on the analysis of the relevant electronic communication markets and on the sector in general. And I think I can probably answer that question myself. I think this is not the first and not be the last time that not all member states transpose EU legislation, international legislation on the intended date. And of course, we know what the end result is going to be, and we know what the guidelines we have adopted as BEREC. So I think we can continue to work with that as a basis, whether or not all the national implementation has happened in time or not. Of course, we would like to see all the member states adopting the new rules as quickly as possible, but I know that there will be delays in many places. Fairly sure there will be a delay in the place I know best as well. So that's that. I have another question, but that was sent before, but that will come for the second Q&A. Now in the chat we have Oliver who wants to take the floor. Please state your question quickly and efficiently, Oliver.
Thanks a lot, Dan. I'll try my best. So the question is to both you and to Jorge on the co-investment guidelines. We believe that for the first time, BEREC actually facilitated stakeholders providing direct redrafting suggestions on a guidelines document, which we welcomed. And we would like to hear you both on first, are you planning to do this in future exercises as well? And secondly, what was the result that the expert working group drew from this attempt this time around? Thanks.
Well, I will happily pass that question on to you, Jorge, if you have something you would like to say to it. I think on the general question, of course, we always want to interact with our stakeholders as much as we can. The way we do it might be different from time to time, depending on what we feel is most efficient, time available, and so on and so forth. And on the specific question, Jorge, do you have a feedback for Oliver?
Well, yes, I think that on that, we will have a conversation with the town on this issue. In general, it depends. It's as usual, mixed feelings. When you have redrafting, there is on specific parts, many times it can help a lot because it led you to understand exactly what is being asked. When there is a complete redrafting, is much more difficult. In fact, it is easier to understand the comments than the complete redrafting. So it depends on the kind of redrafting that it's been done. But this is an issue that we will discuss in general in BEREC on how we will do in the future, etc.
Okay, thank you, Jorge.
Thank you.
Thank you, Oliver.
I have nobody else in the chat room at the moment, so I will give it another 30 seconds maybe for you to write your names there if you have questions on any of the presentations we've seen so far, and if there is nothing appearing in the chat fairly soon, we will go into the second part of the session, where, as a reminder, you will hear from the co-chairs of the PFT first. And I think there is still nothing in the chat. So with that, I think I will hand over to, is it Bo or Bert or both?
Thank you, Dan. It's Bo.
Hi, good. Go on.
Thank you very much. And good afternoon, everyone. I will present a little bit about the BEREC 5G radar that has been out on public consultation. If you remember, in December last year, BEREC published a report on the impact of 5G on regulation and the role of regulation in enabling the 5G ecosystem. This report was the result of what we could call a horizon scanning exercise, and it posed a range of questions such as how services might be rolled out and how markets might develop, and how any of these might raise new regulatory challenges for NRAs. Many aspects of the regulation are involved in the 5G ecosystem, as we all know, and how these are addressed could be critical to the pace at which innovative services are brought to market. especially, for example, within the vertical sectors. So this work we did were intended to help NRAs to anticipate the issues involved to support the pace of innovation to be optimized. This first assessment included stakeholder reviews on an initial list of regulatory aspects in the context of 5G. From that initial list, and this is introduced where we are now, and the stakeholder input, it could be concluded that there are many regulatory aspects that need to be addressed. However, not all of these aspects need attention at the same time. So in order to help NRAs in prioritizing and look at the projects to be addressed, that will address the identified aspects, in the follow-up work we presented a radar that we're plotting the 5G developments according to the anticipated time horizon. And this radar we had on the public consultation, and it ran in the summer from mid-June till end of July. We got 12 full responses. One was confidential, and we're happy with that we got so much response. And in general, we could see that the stakeholders welcomed the opportunity to provide input on both the draft guide to the BEREC 5G radar and also on the 5G radar illustration in itself. In the public consultation, we asked to get responses to some specific questions and also views on the topics identified in the radar. And what we wanted to know was if the guide to the radar correctly reflected the issues that is brought up in the illustrated 5G radar itself. And also on the priorities, since this is intended to be a tool to prioritize, we wanted to get views on these priorities. And of course, we were very interested and keen to know if something was missing from the radar. It was mostly agreement on priorities, but with some argument for earlier prioritization, mostly from those that were close to specific item and issues. They were keen on having this earlier, but I think it was very good responses here. And there was one topic that so I could also then add to say that the way it is set up and in the radar, we try to see it as that the timing is when BEREC should be prepared and ready to work with items. The items are not put in the radar at the time of start for BEREC, but rather to be ready for tackling these different topics and challenges, for example. And what was really important for us was that there was one additional topic that was identified, and that we were supposed to or asked to put into the 5G radar, and that was on satellite communication. And satellite communications frequently associated with 5G connectivity in different use cases, we thought could be proper to put in there, and that's a thing we also did. And in general, you could say that stakeholders were appreciative in how to support how BEREC supported the 5G deployment, and would like to see us that 5G is a really strategic priority to promote competition in the future. If we go to the next slide, we see the updated 5G radar, and as I said, we got support for a lot in it, and we have added the satellite communication. It is not in the straight path. It is a little bit on a lower relevance level, but it's a little bit away into the future also. And of course, you will get this is an updated version. It will be published now after this, and you will see it and be able to look around in it. Going to the next slide. Going forward, we have developed this radar to help BEREC and NRAs to plan addressing requirements according to the occurrence and urgency in the future, as I've said. And in this sense, the radar can be seen as a complement to the yearly work program, and help us in BEREC and the NRAs to plan ahead further than the one-year work programs, which is, I think, is a good way of lifting the eyes a little bit forward and seeing into the future. And but it's also important to emphasize, I think, here that this tool is not showing specific projects, but rather developments that may require regulatory attention in the future. So this is intended to identify, and then the projects will end up in the specific working groups to be dealt with there. And in keeping this up to date, this tool for finding the path forward, we also, of course, need input from stakeholders, and are very much appreciative of that, what we have received so far. And we continue to look at and search information and input on the 5G in the future, and also the coming year. I would ask for stakeholder involvement. And one possibility is a public workshop planned for this in the first half of 2021. So with that, I thank you for your attention and pass the word over to Björn, please.
Thank you very much, Bo. So the next topic will be the BEREC response on the targeted public consultation on the evaluation of the state aid rules for the deployment of broadband networks, which has also been prepared in the Fixed Network Evolution Working Group. And we can go to the first slide now. So the response is going to be published today, and it's focused on the targeted public consultation, which means the technical questionnaire. It's probably also known with the stakeholders. The Commission issued two questionnaires, one of them addressing a large number of different aspects on state aid regulations. It's comprised of 152 questions in general. And the consultation on the revision of the state aid, or the evaluation of the state aid routes, opened on the 8th September and is going to close on the 5th of January. So we are ready already now to provide our response. The questionnaire requests information on the application of the 2013 Broadband State Aid Guidelines and the 2014 General Block Exemption Regulations. So both types of regulations have been in place for quite some time now, and we observed a lot of changes in the meantime in the market, also in the objectives set out on European level for connectivity. For instance, the Gigabit Society connectivity communications was adopted in 2016 and set out new objectives for connectivity in Europe, which of course were not reflected in the current, are not yet reflected in the current provision of the state aid rules. Next slide, please. BEREC addresses a large number of topics where NRAs have experiences, either based on the application of state aid rules, even though this differs a lot between individual NRAs, as different tasks are mandated based on the national legislation to NRAs, and also BEREC answers out of the experiences made in sector regulation, and also the application of the BCRD, as there are very close links in many questions, for instance, terms and for access, pricing conditions, and so on, which are closely related also to the provisions that we have in the BCRD and also in the framework directive, which has been replaced by the EECC now, so to say, in the sector regulation. BEREC is of the view that the involvement of NRAs should be further enhanced. Because of this reason, we observe a lot of interdependencies between what is done in state aid regulations and in the other tasks that are mandated to the NRAs. And in our view, it is important to apply consistent rules, in particular for access, wholesale access products, to foster effective competition. And NRAs are, of course, have the knowledge gained over 20 experiences in terms of when it comes to determining appropriate access conditions and prices. BEREC will also inform in this response on relevant definitions which are relevant for the revision of the, or possible revision, to so to say, of the state aid rules, So, for instance, in our view, it's not really clear which type of speeds are referred to. But now there are definitions for speed available, for instance, in the open access, in the open internet guidelines, which have been revised this year as well, but also in the VHCN guidelines, which defined, just recently adopted, which also define, based on the speed, certain types of networks as VHCN. In principle, BEREC regards it as important that a full set of access obligations is imposed in the case of state aid funding, because public money is handed over, and in particular into areas where competition usually is often is not really high anyway. And these obligations imposed need to be consistent, to the degree appropriate, of course, to other provisions which are in place. So, for instance, when an SMP operator is receiving funds, it is questionable whether the access conditions for a bitstream product in the funded region should in any way be different from the bitstream access in a non-funded area, which is regulated on the grounds of SMP determination. These are some of the main aspects of the BEREC response. And with this, I will now hand over to Katja and Vasiliki of the 5G cybersecurity working group. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Björn. Good afternoon, everyone. I will shortly present the BEREC recent activities concerning 5G Toolbox Strategic Measures 5 and 6 implementation, which was done by the ad hoc 5G Cybersecurity Working Group. If you go to the first slide, following the invitation of the NRAs Cooperation Group, BEREC ad hoc 5G Cybersecurity Working Group started this exercise of exploring the strategic measures 5 and 6 of the 5G cybersecurity toolbox. BG compiled 2 questionnaires and distributed those to the relevant NRAs, and NRAs forwarded relevant questionnaire also to the national MNOs. Responses gathering exercise lasted until mid-September, with some clarification around about the information for NRAs in October. BEREC received only anonymized data, since answers from the MNOs were gathered and made anonymous by national regulatory authorities. During September, working group organized also a series of webinars with stakeholders mentioned here in the slide. For our members, it was a very useful experience in order to understand the explored topics also from other perspectives. If you go to the next slide. Well, the Board of Regulators adopted 2 documents. The first one, 227, is an internal document that was adopted and sent to the NRAs Cooperation Group. VG prepared also a shorter public version of internal report, number 228. Both of them I will shortly present in the next slide. If you go to the next slide. In its survey, BEREC explored, as mentioned, SM5, Strategic Measure 5, ensuring the diversity of suppliers for individual MNO through appropriate multi-vendor strategies, and SM6, strengthening the resilience at national level. Based on the questionnaires and with answers gathered, VG explored especially the national competencies of national authorities and their perception of the 5G Toolbox strategic measures 5 and 6, the existing or planned national activities concerning the relevant legislation, especially drafting the legislation concerning those two measures, current situation about the vendor diversity of the technical equipment and software in the MNOs networks. And we also presented the MNOs criteria they're using now for vendor 5G equipment selection. In a separate chapter, the open issues observed with this survey were gathered, and some of the views of different vendors and associations mentioned here are also presented in one part of this report. If we go to the next slide. A summary of the main findings from the internal report is presented in this public document. The document will be published after the European Commission's adoption and publication of the documents included in this security package. So hopefully any day after tomorrow, and most likely before December 18th. This document does not reveal any unanonymized data. So no country names are mentioned or any MNOs mentioned explicitly anywhere. It contains main observations of the working group in this survey, and just as well some of the open issues identified by the working group are presented. If we go to the next slide. This public document will also be presented in this public event we are organizing BEREC together with ENISA and European Commission on December 21st between 2 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The workshop will be opened by the keynote speakers, BEREC Chair Dan Sjöblom and Johan Lempassar, Executive Director of ENISA. Here is also presented shortly agenda, so the titles of the presentations that will take place in this public event, and for joining you can register in the BEREC website. There's also possibility to send questions since there will also be a moderated Q&A section in the last part of the workshop. I think I have come to the end. Thank you for your attention, and I go back to Dan.
Thank you very much, Katja, and the other presenters. So again, stakeholders, please indicate your name and affiliation in the chat box if you want to raise any questions. We have one question that was sent to us before that I will read out to Katja and Vasu now. It's the person who likes to know if the work on the 5G security toolbox strategic measure has included thinking about tech neutrality principles. So back to you.
I'm taking this. Hi, this is Vasu. We have to clarify here that BEREC was mandated by the initial 5G cybersecurity recommendation to carry out surveys for the NRAs cooperation group and the Commission. So BEREC does not draft any guidelines towards some principles or something, just carries out the state of play market and member states surveys regarding the way the 5G cybersecurity toolbox strategic measures 5 and 6 are being implemented or are planned to be implemented in the member states in different countries. So although the technology neutrality principle is a default for the BEREC members, we don't draft any guidelines towards the cybersecurity implementation of the toolbox. So we serve as a gathering information facilitator. As such, we cannot state anything for the future. We just say what is there for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Vasu. Dear stakeholders, everything seems to be very clear from the presentations we have seen here today. I have nobody in the chat function. Oh, Oliver is back. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Dan. I would have a question both to the co-chairs of the ad hoc cybersecurity working group, please, and a question on a report that you have released today, but which has not been presented. So, for the co-chairs, speaking a little bit in prolongation of the question you just answered, Vasu, I would be curious to hear whether there are any indications as to how the collaboration between BEREC and the ad hoc working group and the CISNG will continue. There seem to have been frictional losses in information transmission, and are there any measures foreseen to guarantee that the input that we give through BEREC actually arrives? And the other general question that I wanted to raise concerns the report that BEREC has published on penalties in the electronic communication sector. And I would like to inquire with Dan and the other forthcoming BEREC chairs, what conclusions BEREC draws from this report for its future priorities, given also that enforcement is an explicit priority of the European Commission's working program, which BEREC endorses. Thank you very much.
Okay, so maybe back to Vasu and Katja for the first question first.
Yes, it's always a pleasure, Oliver, to expand the discussion on the implementation of the toolbox. So, our mandate is clear. We assist the NIS Cooperation Group and the Commission. And it was clear, as we know, and we've been talking about this from the very beginning of our group. We gather information, we try to report it as thoroughly and as clearly as possible, and pass it on as internal documentation to the Commission and to the NIS Cooperation Group. I would not quarrel at all on how this is presented, and we are quite certain that the information we have provided so far has been used. And we're rather happy at this point with the use of the information we have provided. We feel that like we're part of the game here. I don't know if this is enough for you.
Well, thanks, Vasu. No, I can just confirm that I think we are learning more and more the complementarity that BEREC can have in these discussions where others are perhaps the main actors, and we will continue to develop that, I'm sure. Also going forward, this is not a topic that is going away. And I think for your second questions there, I don't really have any specific comment on the document that we released. I think the document speaks for itself. I think you're right that full implementation and the potential penalties and so on may well be very important going forward. Maybe I would ask if Michel has any more comments to make on this, looking forward into the work program for the coming year.
Not for the time being, Dan. No. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Oliver, for the questions. I'm sure we'll continue to interact with you as we go forward. Anyone else who wants to ask any question at this point? That does be the case. If that is so, we have in fact reached the end of this debriefing meeting with your stakeholders. I will give it another 10 seconds or so to see that nobody comes through in the chat. No. Well, since this is my last debrief as chair, I would like to take the opportunity, of course, then to end the meeting with you here today by thanking you for meeting with us throughout the year. We had the first debrief, as you will recall, in physical format, and then COVID came along, but I think we've managed to have a really good level of interaction. Also in the digital format, we have increased the number of participants quite a lot in going digital. So that's one learning that we take with us from this year. On top of thanking you, stakeholders, I would of course also like to thank BEREC office for ensuring that we can have the meetings like this. The technology has worked really well. That's very valuable, of course, to us. And I would like to end by thanking my own chair's team, who have really also been a major part in ensuring that we have continued dialogue, and wishing Michel and his team all the best for the next debriefing, where you will be at the steering wheel. So that's all I think for today. I want to wish everyone a happy end of the year and stay safe. And I hope to see you all back in some other capacity as outgoing chair next year. But in 2021, hopefully we will be returning at some point during the year to in-life meetings with our friends and colleagues. Let's hope for a good vaccination result, and also very responsible behavior amongst our public. So thank you all very much for this year, and over and out.